Cabernet is a narrative-driven RPG that blends visual novel storytelling with exploration, time management, and light stat development. You play as Liza, a newly turned vampire struggling to control her thirst, keep up a human facade, and unravel the town's secrets, all while managing relationships and facing difficult moral choices. But is Cabernet worth playing? To answer that, let's first explore the game's immersive elements, its art, music, sound, and voice acting. Cabernet is set in a dark, atmospheric town inspired by 19th century Europe, blending gothic elegance with an underlying sense of unease. The cobblestone roads and shadowy forests evoke a setting where modest townsfolk and refined high society coexist. Grand estates, dimly lit streets, and candlelit interiors create a world that feels hauntingly beautiful. Each area you explore has its own unique interactions and hidden secrets to uncover, making the world feel alive and immersive. The game's sound design and music enhance the atmosphere, heightening tension and setting the mood. As someone who loves both historical Regency-style stories and dark Victorian aesthetics, I was immediately drawn into this setting. But with that said, there are some small historical inaccuracies in Cabernet. If you are expecting a fully period-accurate world, you may find these details distracting. The characters themselves are expressive and fit well with the game's overall art style, but some aspects of their animation can feel a bit stiff. Choppy, zoomed-in walking animations and occasional story logic pauses can make the characters feel a bit awkward at times. If you are sensitive to these kinds of details, it's something to keep in mind. On the other hand, the environment feels incredibly alive. The sound design and music are excellent, fully immersing you in the game's dark, historical, Regency-inspired world that really creates a setting that feels both glamorous and deeply unsettling. One of the biggest surprises? Cabernet is fully voice acted. For a game developed by just 2 people, the voice acting is genuinely impressive. The actors and actresses suit all of their characters quite well, adding an extra layer of immersion to the game's already very rich atmosphere.
You look like you've seen a ghost. Are you all right?
When was the last time you watched the sunrise?
I can't believe I'm actually flying.
All this talk about death. Don't you feel more alive than you ever have right now?
Of course, voice acting is subjective. If you're someone who prefers to play without it, or if certain performances don't resonate with you, the game does include an option to toggle voice acting entirely off in the settings. There are a few minor inconsistencies too, where the spoken dialogue doesn't match the text exactly, usually just a word or two of difference, but these instances are fairly rare and don't detract much from the overall experience. And like most visual novel style games, lip syncing in this game isn't precisely animated, relying instead on a general talking animation when a character speaks. So if this is something that bothers you, it is also worth noting. But overall, Cabernet delivers a deep, atmospheric experience with strong voice performances and only a few minor aesthetic flaws. For a game made by such a small team, the overall aesthetic quality feels quite impressive. But how is the story? The story in Cabernet is well written and compelling, the dialogue is intriguing, and the narrative is filled with plenty of dramatic, emotionally charged moments that keep you engaged. Compared to other visual novels, Cabernet is missing a few quality of life features that would enhance the experience, like the ability to automatically skip previously read dialogue for multiple playthroughs or accessing a text log in case you missed something. Additionally, while the game offers a wealth of choices to your player, some of the dialogue options you can choose from can feel a bit vague, making it a little bit unclear exactly how your character will respond to certain situations. Adding more clarity to these choices would be a welcome improvement, but while some gameplay mechanics could be more polished, Cabernet's writing itself is quite good. Each character has distinct quirks and personality traits, and the dialogue feels mature, witty, and engaging. The world is richly developed, and the game's narrative carries a clear sense of passion and vision from the developers. And Cabernet has surprisingly been one of the more interactive and choice-driven story games I have played in a while. While the main story has linear elements, it appears to have multiple possible directions you can take in the story, potentially a good versus evil path, alongside numerous branching sub-stories that you can significantly impact or ignore entirely. Rather than feeling like you're simply watching a movie within a game, Cabernet makes you feel like you're actively shaping an entire world. This is especially evident through your relationships with the game's many characters. You have plenty of freedom to explore befriending, neglecting, or even antagonizing the characters as you would like, and your choices can deepen bonds, sever relationships, or in some cases even lead to certain characters' untimely deaths. Engaging with these characters also unlocks side stories that unfold in different ways depending on your decisions, if you choose to pursue them at all. And the side stories themselves are surprisingly entertaining, featuring a variety of interactive elements and minigames that keep the gameplay fresh. Ultimately, Cabernet strikes a rare balance between meaningful choices and a compelling branching narrative, making it quite a standout experience for those who love choice-driven story games. But of course, with any choice-driven game where decisions shape the story in meaningful ways, there is always the downside of running into bugs. Since Cabernet was developed by a two-person indie team, there are some story logic bugs that can potentially impact your gameplay in a pretty big way. For instance, some players have encountered progression locking bugs or soft locks, such as getting stuck in certain areas or being unable to enter key locations, often requiring you to reload the game to continue. But saving and reloading can also lead to unexpected issues. Skill point allocations might reset, certain quests might fail without explanation, or you might need to backtrack a little bit to resolve certain issues. User interface and interaction quirks could also make the gameplay feel a bit clunky to you. And sometimes when you're moving your character around the map, selecting a target like a door, window, or furniture item can feel a bit unreliable, requiring you to kind of move into an awkward position in order to get the interaction with the object to show up properly. If you're a player who also doesn't enjoy moving around the map, there is some movement and travel in this game. And while the town is fairly small, as you continue playing the story, you will unlock more areas that you would need to walk back and forth through. So for some players, this might start to feel a little tedious, especially if you're trying to sprint around when your blood levels are low. Yet, despite these flaws, Cabernet still delivers a pretty rich and immersive story worth experiencing. And before I move on, I do want to talk a little bit about the character you actually play as. As far as character customization goes, the protagonist, Liza, cannot be renamed, and her appearance stays fixed throughout the game. She has a voice actress of her own and a fully defined backstory, which might leave you feeling like you can't contribute to her looks or personality much, but you do have some influence over her development. For instance, at the start of the game, you're able to choose her stats, and your decisions in dialogue and actions you take will shape her character further. And overall, while the customization is somewhat limited, Lisa's character development and the ability to influence her appearance through the different dresses you can wear do give you opportunities to make her feel like your own protagonist within the story. But of course, some players may feel limited by the inability to rename the protagonist or fully customize her look, so it's worth considering that if that's a deal breaker for you. Now let's talk about stats, systems, and gameplay. As you progress through the game, you'll earn experience points, and once you've gained enough experience, your vampire rank will increase. Each time you level up in vampire rank, you can choose which of your 4 core character skills you'd like to enhance: art, writing, history, science, or a mix of them. And these abilities shape how you play the story, unlocking unique choice options in your playthrough, allowing you to diagnose different illnesses, play music, quote famous literature during conversations, and more. You can also dedicate some of your daytime hours to reading, gaining extra points in specific skills, like studying a music book, for example, boosts your artistic knowledge. However, actions such as reading books in Cabernet take time, meaning you'll need to weigh whether the skill points you'll earn are worth the hours spent. And just like you level up your other skills, throughout the story, you will also gain points on a morality scale. Cruel or selfish actions will raise your nihilism, while selfless and generous choices will increase your humanity, and various options will be available for you throughout the game depending on how high your nihilism and humanity scores are. Seeing as you're a new vampire now, you also get some neat supernatural abilities that are separate from your skills and morality. During the story, you'll unlock all 4 of these vampire powers, and you'll be able to use them for the most part as you choose, with of course some restrictions on locations or characters you can affect. One of the first abilities you'll unlock is flying. In the game, normally you're able to walk or sprint to get around to different places, but if you need to move faster or reach a high up area like a balcony or rooftop, you are able to use your new vampire powers to shapeshift into an adorable bat that can fly at an impressive pace. Your bat form is super useful for moving quickly across the map, especially when you're low on blood and your character begins to walk sluggishly, making it an ability you'll probably like using quite often. And that leads me to your next ability, drinking blood. Since you're a vampire, of course, you need to drink blood to sustain yourself. To keep track of how much blood you have in your system and when you'll need to drink more, you can look up at the wine glass icon in the top left corner of your screen. Once it gets below halfway full or so, you'll gradually start to experience symptoms of being low on blood. And if you run out of blood completely, you will die and you'll have to reload your game from a previous save file to continue. On the other hand though, if you drink too much blood, you become intoxicated and get a temporary boost to your stats. The game does state that there are drawbacks to doing this, but the only thing I've seen really is that your screen seems to warp a bit when you're in the intoxicated state, and perhaps your overall blood drains a bit faster. With that said, it doesn't seem like there is much in the way of true consequences for blood consumption overall. For instance, you're told several times throughout the game that any vampires who drink too much blood become feral. Yet, I have seen other players stating that they have drank blood excessively and killed multiple people and rabbits, but never experienced a feral state, or really any severe consequences. Although your ability to drink blood is introduced to you quite early on in the game, I don't think you're able to actually take advantage of using it until you learn another ability called Enchantment. In this story, every vampire is able to lull humans into a transfixed state by performing a certain action that is unique to them. When you unlock your enchantment ability, you'll be able to use it at your leisure on humans who you have certain friendship levels with, allowing you to suggest things to them that will alter their subconscious, such as telling them not to overdrink alcohol anymore or even ruining their marriage. While humans are enchanted, you can also drink their blood. But of course, you'll need to be cautious if you don't want to become intoxicated off the blood or accidentally kill them. Yet, keep in mind that you don't have to drink only the blood of humans to survive. There are rabbits in the forest as well as blood of varying quality that you can just buy from some of the establishments in town. And finally, as a vampire, you also have the ability to become invisible at will. This is a timed ability, meaning you can't use it endlessly, but you can use it again once it times out, without any noticeable cooldown. While you're invisible, you'll see an icon appear in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, showing your character's face, so you'll need to be sure you're watching the timer on this when you're using this ability in important situations. You can use your invisibility to spy on others, sneak into locations, steal items, sneak up on rabbits in the forest, and even pickpocket people you see around town. But if you do choose to pickpocket someone, keep in mind that the action typically only gives you about 1 coin and raises your Nihilism stat. You'll also get a QuickTime event during pickpocketing where you'll need to press a key correctly before the timer runs out in order to succeed, and if you fail this and get caught, the game will end. Thankfully though, you can always reload from your last save even if you do fail at pickpocketing someone, and the QuickTime events themselves aren't too difficult to do. So even if you're someone who doesn't have fantastic reaction time, or you don't enjoy QuickTime events much, the events in this game aren't very punishing and typically just add a small bit of urgency to a couple of your in-game actions. There are also several other systems in the game. One of the most important is the time mechanic, which you can find in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Acting as a stamina system, it limits how many major actions you can take each day before you must return to your coffin. You can perform up to 3 major actions daily, so you will need to choose wisely how you spend your time. However, many smaller interactions don't consume time, which still allows you to explore, converse, and immerse yourself in the world as much as you'd like. And I mentioned that you can use the wardrobe in your bedroom to change your character's outfit, but you can also decorate your room in the game a bit too. To do so, you'll want to purchase furniture items from the shops around town. Now, it's nothing comparable to like Final Fantasy XIV decorating, but you can change the color of your curtains and small things like that, which does make the game feel a bit more personal. You also have an inventory where items you pick up are stored. As needed, you can visit this menu and hit use on your items throughout the story. And alongside the items in your personal inventory, your character also carries money in the form of coins too. You can earn money by completing various tasks for the vampire who sired you, along with other opportunities throughout the game. However, the economy in Cabernet does feel a bit inconsistent. While the protagonist does state that just 5 coins are enough to cover a week of living expenses, several of the items you'll want to purchase from the store to complete side quests cost 15 coins, and even some of the endings in the game require larger amounts of coins too. This can make you feel hesitant to spend your money on items like outfits and decorations, just because of the scarcity of money and the cost of other more story-necessary items in the game. Beside the wardrobe in your character's bedroom is also another important item that you can interact with, the Vanity. If you click on this vanity inside your bedroom, you will have the option to save your game manually. While Cabernet does have an autosave mechanic that will naturally have one save file for your game available for you to return to if you need to, if you enjoy exploring the story or know you have a difficult choice ahead, it is always best to save the game yourself ahead of time too. And that leads me to one of the issues with the save system in this game, which may be quite bothersome for some players. You can't save the game outside of your bedroom, meaning if you want to quickly save your progress somewhere, you can't really do that. You would have to return all the way back to your bedroom, if that's even possible at the time in the story, and then save the game yourself. And another significant downside to the game's save system is that you can only have 4 total saves, 3 manual saves alongside your autosave, for the entirety of your game. Naturally, you can overwrite the saves as you'd like, but for a choice-based game like this, I did expect there to be several more slots where you could save your progress and return to it later. Likewise, the autosaves aren't marked super well with identifying images or names, and you can't rename them, so it can be difficult to tell which save you'd like to load if you don't know your exact playtime on it. Hopefully, the developers will tweak the save system a bit in the future, even if it is just by adding more slots that you could save your game in, because that alone would be really nice. Cabernet also has a handful of mini-games you can encounter during the story. For instance, you can try your luck at cards, specifically in a game of 21, where you can wager the coins you've earned. While there's some strategy involved, this simple game ultimately relies on the luck of the draw. You can decide if you'd like to play or not, and choose how much you'd like to bet. And another mini-game lets you play songs on the piano at the music school. This involves reading a sheet of music, but no musical knowledge is actually required. The notes you need to play are clearly written out in their letter form. All you have to do is press the corresponding letter keys on your keyboard, in time with the song's QuickTime events. You can reattempt this as needed, making the experience feel relaxed and pressure-free. And like the card game, the piano minigame is also completely optional, allowing you to engage with it only if you enjoy that kind of challenge. And finally, you also have a list of quests you can do in your menus, as well as a list of relationships you've built. In your relationship menu, you'll find portraits of all of the characters you've met, a few personal details for each of them, and your current relationship standing with them. As I mentioned before, characters that trust you enough to be enchanted are marked with a purple outline around their portrait. Characters you haven't met yet have their details blacked out, and those that have perished during the game will be marked as deceased. And there are 2 total pages of characters for you to meet. Keep an eye on this page because your relationship points with each of the characters can unlock different dialogue options, such as friendship and even romance options. I believe you can build friendship with any of the characters in the game, but I've only seen 4 characters confirmed so far as romanceable. If you're curious, the romanceable characters seem to be Alisa, a fellow vampire, Roman, a human bookshop owner, Anastasia, a music teacher, and Evgeny, a poet. And for those of you who love pets, there is also an adorable stray cat that you can find and befriend as well throughout the story. So let's look now at pricing and playtime. Cabernet is $19.99 at full price on Steam. I'm not sure if I should compare its pricing to visual novels or to other branching story games, since it feels significantly deeper than your typical indie-made stat-raising visual novel game, yet it is also quite different from the more linear, movie-like story games from studios like Don't Nod or Supermassive Games. But Cabernet does seem to offer good value when compared to mid-tier visual novels, branching narrative games, and indie RPG pricing. It strikes a fair balance considering its depth and replay potential. Keep in mind though that the limited save slots in the game and the lack of an auto-advance option for previously seen dialogue could hinder replayability for some players though. but hopefully the developers will consider adding these features in the future. So exactly how much playtime and replayability could you get from the game? Well, most players report completing one full playthrough of Cabernet in around 8 hours. However, thanks to its branching choices, varied endings, and engaging systems, there is a lot of content beyond the main storyline that does encourage you to play the game again. So if you enjoy seeing different outcomes in your games, you could likely hit 16 hours by completing 2 full playthroughs of the story and even push your playtime up to 20 hours if you enjoy exploring different routes. So what's my opinion? Is Cabernet worth it? Having learned that this game was developed by a 2-person team, I'm genuinely impressed by what they've created. Yes, there are a few bugs, but considering how immersive and unique the experience is, and how your choices in the game really feel impactful, I am personally willing to overlook them, especially since the developers are actively working on fixing these issues with new patches. From the visuals and music to the voice acting, Cabernet pulls you into a world that blends gothic vampire lore with high society Regency drama in a very captivating way. The story is compelling, and I never once felt bored or like it was dragging on. There's always something interesting unfolding, and I love how the game lets you choose which side characters you'd like to interact with. This freedom makes your experience feel personal, as if you're tailoring the story to your own preferences. Progression also feels meaningful, with multiple systems to explore, and the game gives you plenty of time to become comfortable with each new mechanic, so it never really feels overwhelming. But if you do ever feel lost, the quest list in your menu offers helpful guidance too. Overall, I found the gameplay surprisingly smooth and bug-free in my personal experience. And there were moments that had my heart racing, as well as others that were deeply emotional. And while I would recommend the game even at its full price to most players who enjoy a female protagonist-driven story with a gothic Regency twist, there are still definitely some players for whom this game might not be a good fit. For instance, if you can't tolerate bugs in your games, you may find Cabernet more frustrating than fun. And if you're very used to playing double or AAA games, you may find the indie production of this game to be comparably less polished. The protagonist also has her own distinct personality, which may make it harder for players to feel fully immersed, especially if you're someone who prefers a character that's more closely aligned with your own appearance and personality. And of course, if horror elements aren't your thing, you probably want to pass on this game. It certainly has unsettling moments, both emotionally and physically in some of its bloodier scenes. And if you're sensitive to mature dialogue or substance-related content, be aware that many of these characters are adults who speak with fairly mature language and drink quite substantially, and the protagonist herself interacts with alcohol multiple times. The game even mirrors alcohol with blood beyond just the name Cabernet, as I mentioned, since drinking too much can make your character intoxicated. And finally, for some, the open-ended nature of the game could be overwhelming. There's a lot of freedom in what you can do, and while quests do provide you some direction, you're free to explore at your own pace and complete or ignore most quests as you'd like, which might not be ideal for players who prefer more structure or guidance. But if these things don't bother you and haunting historical stories sound like your cup of tea, I highly recommend giving Cabernet a chance. It's an immersive, beautifully crafted game that lingers on your thoughts even after you stop playing. I'm honestly surprised it hasn't found a bigger audience yet, but perhaps that just makes it feel like even more of a hidden gem. And despite Cabernet having very positive reviews on Steam, I myself almost didn't give this game a try because of all of the early reviews warning about bugs, but I really haven't encountered that many bugs myself, and I'm honestly glad I tried it, because I've really been loving this game. So, that's it. Hopefully this review was useful to you in deciding whether or not you should play Cabernet for yourself. If you found any of the information in this video helpful, please take just a moment to give it a quick like, and please subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more of my content. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.